Hey, how's it going? Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about how to animate and program your menus so that when you have something that needs a yes or no, like are you sure, yes, no, you'll have that. You can pull up a settings tab, you can go back to your game, and this we'll figure out how to do this nice little animation here. So here I am in Unity 2019.3. The packages that I'm using for this are Text-Meshpro, and that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all you're going to need for this tutorial. Okay, this is my menu. I'm going to go ahead and delete it so I can show you guys how to do this from scratch. I'm not going to delete this button here. This is the open menu button. When you click it, it opens the menu. All right, pretty straightforward. All you have to do is create a button. If you want it to be scaled, right? So if the screen size changes, so I'm going to HD here, it'll scale. You can see that it got narrower here as the size of the screen, the width of the screen got narrower. Okay, so this goes based on a percentage of your screen size. If you want it to just be a static size, so it's not going to change in terms of size, then you can put the anchors up at the top left, and then you can change the width and the height manually. All right, I'm gonna keep it how it was, so I'll just press Control Z there, and it'll go back to the way it was. So I want that to scale based on my screen size. All right, and another thing, in your main canvas, all right, so I'm assuming that you already have a canvas. If you don't, right click UI and place a canvas in your scene. Okay, once you've got your canvas, you're going to go into Canvas Scaler, go to UI Scale Mode, and click Scale with Screen Size. And my reference resolution is always full HD. Most people are playing on full HD right now. Okay, so that's 1920 on the X and 1080 on the Y. All right, and I always match it with the width. Okay. So what else do we need to do? We need to create this menu container, all right? And I'll show you what that looks like. This is just where my menu is contained, all right? It makes sense. So I'm going to delete that and recreate it, okay? So I'm going to right-click, create an empty game object. I'll rename that to menu container. And then I'm going to pull it up here to where I want it. You guys can put it wherever you want, okay? So that's about where I want it, and I'm going to go ahead and think about where I need these anchors in order to have my my container there. Okay, so this is about the size that I want. I'm going as a percentage here, as a percentage of the screen space. So whenever my screen is scaled, I want the container to be about in this space. So I'm going to change the min on my X, and 1.5, 1.25 looks about right. I'm going to go 0.5 for the Y. That looks pretty decent. So that'll be from the center of the screen. So you know, just a little bit higher, 0.55. It's pretty good. And then for the max on the X, I'll go 0.3. It's a little narrow. It's a little wide. 3.125 looks good. All right, and then I'm going to go 0.8. Let's try 0.9. 0.9 is pretty good. Now, these are the anchors wherever, however, whatever size your screen is, the anchors are going to control how big this object is because it's going to stretch. Okay, so I'm going to put this at 0, and that'll stretch it out to the edges of the anchors. I'm sorry, to the corners of the anchors. All right, now I'm going to add a component, and I'm going to call this a vertical layout. All right. I'm going to get the vertical layout group. Okay, so whenever I place an object, whenever I child an object into the menu container, the vertical layout group is going to control it and move it into a vertical position. All right, so I'm going to start these objects in the center, in the middle. Okay, I'm going to create a button, and I'm going to create a Text-Meshpro button so that the text on there is automatically a Text-Meshpro UGUI component. Okay, so this will give us a really good text that scales well regardless of the font size. Okay, so you can see that because of my vertical layout group that went straight to the middle of the center, and the vertical layout group is controlling its size right now, which is fine for me. I can still manually adjust it. All right, so I'm going to put this at 250 and 60. That looks pretty good. All right, and I'm going to put auto size on my Text-Meshpro text UI. All right, text UI. So let's go ahead and create like 4 buttons here. So the spacing is a little off for me. I'm gonna say don't force the expansion, and I'm gonna give it about 15.5 in between buttons. Okay, so that looks decent. All right, so we'll do a really basic setup here. So we'll try doing a resume button, which will just close the menu. Okay, we'll do settings, go to main menu, and then we'll go to, let's say, exit application. Okay, so let's say resume button, settings, button. And I'll have the script for you guys in order to plug in some actions for these buttons. Okay, to main menu and exit app. Okay, so we'll change the text on all of these. And actually I want all of my texts, I don't want them on auto size, I'll actually want them all to be the same size. 36 is too small, let's say 42 is good. Okay, and now, sorry, I'm going to put resume, so write in whatever you need to have for these texts. You can automatically, you can plug these into the script that we're going to use. Okay, you could serialize the fields and have Text-Meshpro UGUIs for these, so that if, for example, if you have localization in your game, you can automatically change. Instead of resume, you can have whatever language you need. Resume in whatever language you need. Okay, so we'll say to main menu. Alright, so that's what happens when you don't auto size it, and we'll say exit. Alright, that's pretty good. Now we're going to create that "Are you sure" box. Okay, so let's say that you're doing something important or you're exiting the application. You click exit. You want to give your players an option to make sure that that's what they actually wanted to do. So we'll create another container. All right, we'll call this the "Are you sure" container. And we're going to put something on here called the layout element, and this will allow it to ignore that vertical layout group that we had before. So it won't be confined to what that object tells it to do. We want this to be in the center. We're going to overlay it over everything else, and we're going to give it anchors. This is about from the left side, we're going to say that this is about 15% in and about 15% away from that right side. So as far as where it is in height, we're going to say that the max is 0.65, let's say. 0.7 is probably better. And 0.3 is good. So we'll put that at 0, so the container will be right there, 15% away from the left side, 15 from the right side. It'll go 30% up and 30% down. Okay, so if you want to see what that looks like, you could add an image component, and that's the position it would be in. Okay, so everything that goes childed to this container will be confined to that space. Okay, so I'm going to create a UI Button-Textmeshpro, and I'm going to remove the button component, and I'm going to make sure that this is at the top of that container. Okay, so I want its max to be, I want the max on the x-axis to be 0 and 1. Okay, so it's going to cover the whole horizontal part, and from the top I'll say that it's 0.8. So let's zero that out and see what it looks like. And I'm going to write "Are you sure?" Again, you can change that in code. Are you sure title? Okay, so we get kind of a background image there and the text. So you could, if you have localization, you could put this into a script and have it change with the localization. All right, now we're going to create two more buttons. We're going to create the yes button and the no button. All right, so let's do two buttons. I'm going to go ahead and set up the settings for this right now. Remember that our title is right there from 0.8 to 1 on the Y. All right, so the max on this is going to be 0.8 and the min is going to be 0, so from the bottom to 0.8. And it is going to go from the left side, so 0 on the X, until the middle. So 0.5 is perfect for that. And we're going to 0 that out. And then we're going to duplicate, and we'll change just the X here. So instead of 0, we're going to go to 0.5, and instead of 0.5, we'll go to 1 for the max. 0 that out. And now we're going to change the text here. We're going to say that the left side is the yes button, and the right side is the no button. And we'll name these buttons so that when we put it on our script, it's really easy. We make sure that we know what those buttons do. Okay, good. Now we're going to close that container, and that's perfect. So let's animate this. Let's animate the menu container. Okay, we're going to go ahead and go to an animation. I have an animation folder. I'm going to have my animations for UI and the UI folder. So I'll create a new animation controller. I'll call this the menu controller. All right, and I already have an animation component on my canvas. If you don't, click add component, and then you can manually type it in. Okay, add component, animator. Okay, so I'm going to drag and drop the controller there, and then I'm going to create a new animation. So I'll go to the animation tab. If you don't have that, you can right click and add tab animation. So animation tab, create, and open menu.anim. All right, now I'm going to click the menu container, and I want to have a keyframe. I'm going to go to 0.25 seconds. All right, so 0.25 seconds into the timeline, this animation is going to end. I'm going to click record, and I'm going to put the anchors up at the top left. All right, so the animation, as you can see, it's sending the anchors to the top left. So you can see that this is backwards if we want this to open the menu, right? So if we're starting at 0, this is actually closing. So we're just going to swap these. Okay, so I'm putting the top left, it's going to be at the top left at 0, and it's going to be where we had set it before at 0.25. Okay, now in order to make it small, actually let's make sure we move it first. So let's go back to that 0 keyframe, and we're going to move it. So manually adjust the position X, position Y, and width and height. All right, so it'll manually, it'll move with the anchors. Now in order to make it small, we have to change the scale. So here we're going to make sure the scale is 1, and at 0 we want to make sure that the scale is 0. Okay, now go back to the other keyframe and change the scale back to 1. All right, so as it comes out, it will scale, so it'll get bigger, right? Okay, so that's it for the animation. That's pretty basic. We want to make sure though that it is not looping, because if it is, then it'll just loop through that animation. All right, so you can see that it's looping there. I turned off loop time, and that should fix it. All right, now you can see that we've got we've already got that state set up in the animator. Okay, so make sure you go to the animator component tab. We're going to create another 2 states. We're going to create the idle state, and we're going to create the close menu state. So In the middle, I'm just going to have idle. And down here, I'm going to have close menu. Oops. Sorry, close menu. All right, and on close menu, I want you to change the speed to -1. So we're actually going to have the same motion here as we do in open menu. Okay, so we're going to put the open menu animation here, but because it's in reverse, right, that -1 means it's going to go from the back of the timeline. Okay, now that we have our states, we're going to make our transition. So we'll start at idle, we'll right click and click make transition. We'll go from idle to close menu. From close menu, I right click and click make transition, go back to idle, and I'm going to do the same thing for open menu. From open menu, oops, back to idle. Okay, now going back from these open menu and close menu states, we can we can allow the has exit time to be enabled on the transition from idle to close menu or open menu. We want to have that off. Okay, and you're going to see a warning here that says transition needs at least one condition or an exit time to be valid, otherwise it will be ignored. Okay, so we need a condition. We're going to have two triggers. We have the open menu trigger and the close menu trigger. So click the plus sign and then click on trigger. I name these open menu and close menu. So now when we go from idle to close menu, our transition will have the condition close menu. So when we fire this trigger, when that's fired, right, we'll go from idle and it'll go straight into the close menu animation. And then it'll go back to idle once that exit time has finished. Okay, so once the animation is finished, it goes back to idle. All right, so let's do the same thing for open menu, right? So from idle to open menu, we click on the transition and we add the open menu trigger as a condition. Okay, so we'll take a look at that in play mode, and that you can see that when you click on these, this will open the menu, obviously, and this will close the menu. Right, now if you had exit time enabled, I would click on that trigger and I'd have to wait half a second or so in order to get that to work. All right, and that's not what you want. You want that to be really responsive. Okay, so make sure that has exit time is off for the transition from your animation to idle. Okay, let's do this from a script. So we have these triggers. We need to control the animator from a script, and I've already got that script written up. We're going to walk through it. So let's actually do this. Let's add component and then type yourself in a new C# script. We're going to call this the MenuUI and then click enter. Oops, sorry about that. MenuUI, and we're going to click new script and create and add. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and double click on MenuUI and open that up, and I'll tell you what you need to add there. All right, let's talk about this script. This is the MenuUI script that you just put on the canvas. You'll be able to find this in the GitHub link that I put in the description. Okay, so we are using system collections. We're using the Unity engine, obviously, and we're using Unity UI because of the buttons. All right. If for example you want to load a scene, that's any scene that you want to load, you have to use scene management. Okay, so if you want to customize those texts, since they are Text-Meshpro UGUIs, you can import Text-Meshpro, the namespace, and you would say, for example, serialize field and bring in a Text-Meshpro UGUI, and then you can customize it. Okay. I'm not using that, so I'm going to pull it out of this. All right. Now, this is the animation stuff that you're going to need. This is the animator that's on the canvas. Since we're using the same, I mean, these triggers aren't going to change, so we're hashing those string names into an int, and this is almost like a constant, so that's why I have that naming format. All right, this duration is the duration of the open and close animation. Remember, it's the same animation, so we only have to have one duration flow. All right, so we have our button that opens the menu, the button that basically closes the menu, our settings button, the two main menu button, and then the exit application button. All right, the exit application button will actually activate the yes or no panel, the are you sure panel. And when you click yes, then it will exit the application. All right, and if you click no, it'll close the are you sure panel, and you'll be able to see the menu again, right? And then once we get through our animation, after we click close menu, after we get through our animation, we're going to close our menu object. Okay. So the duration is set up when we call the animator. We're going to get the current clip info. So it's the first clip, and we get the length of the clip. That is the duration of the clip. Okay. As far as listeners, these are events that are called when the buttons are clicked. Okay, so when the open menu button is clicked, obviously we're going to call open menu. When the resume button is clicked, we call close menu. The settings button will open settings. We don't have any actions in there. Okay, that's up to you guys. The settings and all that stuff, I'll let you guys extrapolate from this and do your own menu for settings. Okay. To main menu, I'll show you how to use the scene manager in order to get a different scene or to get your main scene, your main menu scene. The exit button will trigger the open are you sure panel action, and then the yes button has a listener for the exit application method. All right. No button will close the are you sure panel, and then when we start the game, right, we want this menu to be inactive. Okay, now we have a private enumerator to handle closing the menu, and this is because when you close the menu, you want to wait for the animation to finish and then actually deactivate the object. Okay, and that way you can't accidentally click on any of the buttons while it's in that little tiny space that we had animated it to go to. Okay, so we call the trigger that says close menu, and that'll activate the close menu animation. We wait for this duration, and then we close the menu. All right. On open menu, if the menu is already open, we're just going to get out. Okay. Otherwise, we're going to activate the menu and fire the trigger that fires the open menu animation. Okay. Close menu, same thing. If it's already closed, then we don't do anything. We just get out of there. All right. Otherwise, we say we're going to close the are you sure panel. If it's already closed, that's fine. Otherwise, we close it. Okay. And then we start that coroutine, that enumerator that you saw before. Okay. Pretty basic stuff here. Open, set these objects active or inactive. So here's where you would put in your actions for opening settings. So you would say, for example, open settings container set active true, for example. Okay, go to main menu. So scene manager has this method called load scene, and it's got 6 signatures, of which one of them is int, which is the index of your main menu, or the index of your scene that you want to open, or you can call that scene by its name. It is safer to do this by index. I would do it by index because if you don't write this string in properly, or if for some reason you change the name of your scene, then having a hard-coded string here will make it invalid. We'll make this invalid. Okay, and then exit application, we just call the application class and quit. All right, so pretty basic stuff. Let's set it up in the inspector. So back in the inspector, we click on our canvas and we go to our main menu. We're going to put the animator into the menu animator bucket, and the open menu, we find our open menu button, put that in there. Same for resume, settings, to main menu, and the exit application. Even though this is inactive, we can still put these buttons in, all this stuff in. So I'm putting in the yes and no button, and then the menu object is the container. All right. So let's press play, and when we click on these on the open menu button, obviously the menu is going to open, and if we click resume, it's going to close. If we click exit, the yes or no panel will come up, and we'll have the option to yes, and this would call quit, or no, and that would just close that. All right. So if we click on settings, right, it'll tell us open settings, right, because that's what we had as the action in that open settings method. Okay, so let's do a quick adjustment to the Are You Sure panel real quick, and then we'll end the video. All right, so I'm going to activate this so that I can see it, and I'm going to go to all of these and access their image. I'm going to make it a little easier to see. All right, so I'll just make it in red, just like that. Now, if you guys want to know where I got those images for the that you saw in the beginning, the wood panels or whatever, I went to pngtree, okay, pngtree.com, and downloaded a couple of textures there. I overlaid one texture on another. I did this all in Paint. If you want to know what this is a Paint. This is a really simple Paint image. Okay, I just got yeah, it's 15 by 5, 15 pixels by 5 pixels. It's just brown outline with a light brown center. Okay, and then Unity automatically basically makes a gradient because it's stretching the image. Okay, so you can do pretty simple stuff. All you have to do is put those images in there, and you'll see that you get a decent looking menu right away. Like I said, I did that in Paint, so it's not like you have to be a professional on Photoshop in order to get that. Obviously, it helps if you do. If you guys are good at Photoshop, this is going to look awesome for y'all. All right, so hopefully you enjoyed the video. I'll give you some links in the outro and in the description. Thanks a lot for watching. The assets that you saw in this one were from pngtree for the textures that I used on the buttons, for the button images. In the background, you saw the models and things like that from the farm pack from Synty Studios. Any icons were from Flaticon. Those are all for free. If you sign up, you can download up to 100 per day. And then this was the agriculture pack by Smashicons. And I'll make sure to get you guys a link for the camera that I used in this, the tooltips that pop up when you put your mouse over objects in the scene, and for the vehicle exhaust that you see here.